Yeah, now, Tim, maybe you could give us your view from on the sort of situation with the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. Yeah, what's your view?
Well, certainly, we are right now in the thick of the beginning of the salmon season. The Pollux bee season is about to kick off, so kind of COVID is front and center. There certainly has been some distractions here in the U.S. that have kind of focused, but I think that has still been a critical component to the kind of long-term stability and ability to get those seasons in processing and harvesting completed. So that's really been kind of part of the focus that has been touched on a little bit earlier here, is that when COVID came and hit, everyone kind of turned themselves internally focused and have been very much keen on making sure they're going to be able to manage through this massive disruption, particularly on the food service aspect of their business. So, but I think with respect to the outlook, there still are several fundamental dynamics that are in play and will continue to drive transactions here going forward, with more and more professional management teams coming into businesses that are then able to position themselves to be sold or to acquire other companies, is really allowing for more activity in the space. And I think it's kind of a theme that's been ongoing now for several years, has always been an aging ownership group. And I think this recent pandemic is certainly going to be a kind of realization for several owners that they need to be in a position to weather certain storms or uncertainties, and being in a position to look to monetize their investment. And so kind of touched on is what Ignacio said. I think really opening up the credit markets here in the U.S. is going to be, I think, an ongoing challenge for banks, as we're continuing to, on the lending side, feel out what's going to be happening and the long-term impact, and whether or not demand is actually going to be coming back, or if we have a fundamental shift in consumer trends. So I think that's going to be causing this, transaction momentum to be slowed until there's some more clarity into, how the consumer is going to be reacting going forward, and if any of the changes that we're having now are going to be more permanent on that front, or if it's going to be something that we can get back to some level of normalcy relatively quickly, and then potentially have a boon in demand and a pickup here going forward. So I think there's a lot of focus on what's going to be happening with this upcoming season here in the Northwest, and hoping that all of the harvest will be able to be completed, and then the consumer demands on the demand side will be able to pick back up once we're able to get through our COVID situation here.
Tim, over to you as well. Like, I want to get your view. I mean, do you envisage that deals that will be sort of cross-border deals with companies getting into the US, or again, are you thinking it'll be more US company focused you'll be working on in the near future?
I think that is something that's going to be driven a lot by potentially interest rates here, with the massive spending by the Fed, and the potential currency valuation changes is going to be impactful here on how this is all going to shake out. And I think, to build on some of the comments on Ignacio, certainly the supply chain and where your food is coming from is kind of raising in visibility, and where the source of that food and where it's been along the chain and the supply chain. And that's something that I think is going to be a further driver of domestic production in the U.S., and a desire to, for companies that will be recognizing here that there's more than just the lowest cost producer, is there's also the political disruption, the geopolitical risks that are out there with the tariff situation, with reprocessing in China, lack of credit in some Asian countries with the reprocessors. And so to be able to bring that all home, I think and have that supply chain to be domestically produced in the U.S. is something that a lot of people are focused on. And I think that can certainly be something that is provided by outside investors, but I think there is a growing interest in both the private equity community in the domestic market, as well as in and so I think that's really going to drive more activity within the U.S. For U.S. based businesses.
Do you foresee there'll be more kind of horizontal integration going on as well from US companies as a result of this?
Well, this I think that was probably the plan, or maybe more longer term plans for folks, in the very beginning part of 2020 on what their longer term view is. But this certainly has caused folks to understand their supply chain and customer base a lot better, given the dynamic and changes with food service and retail and being able to place that product. So, I think at this point, there is in seafood in general in the U.S. is one that is a lot of fragmented smaller players relative to the large protein players that we have in Purdue, Tyson, JPS, and the like. So until there's some larger scale, and I think that's where people are going to be continuing to get bigger in their own spaces. So I don't foresee necessarily, to your comment on horizontal, that is going to be specific to certain companies, but I think the goal for a lot of folks right now is to continue to get scale and diversify their customer base and end markets.